Welcome to Recovery TV. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about 5 things that you may or may not have heard as part of your sex addiction or betrayal trauma recovery, so don't go anywhere. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about 5 things that kind of make people do a double take when they hear it for the first time in their betrayal trauma recovery or their sex addiction recovery. And you definitely want to stay to the very end to hear the 5th one because it's a doozy. But before we dive into it, I'd like to ask you to please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit that bell so that you can be notified when more videos like this are posted. Now let's get into it. A large part of recovery work is changing the narrative that governs the life of the person in recovery, which means you should be having some aha moments as part of that effort. I'm going to present to you 5 of the more common aha moments that I have experienced from the people that I've worked with in recovery, but it by no means is an exhaustive list. So if you have some aha moments from your recovery, mental health work, or other efforts that you've put into your life, feel free to post those in the comments below. So one of the most common concepts that people in betrayal trauma recovery and sex addiction recovery hear that kind of makes them do a double take is that sex addiction is not about sex. What? Well, that's right. Sex addiction is not about sex. It's more about emotion management than anything else. For people that are actually addicted to sex or they're being sexually compulsive in their life, they are more often than not using their sexuality as a way to manage difficult and dark feelings that they don't feel like is appropriate to talk about, discuss, disclose, or express in their open and everyday life. They feel compelled to manage these difficult feelings in darkness, and they just choose dark methods to do it, like sex addiction. Some people will choose other forms of compulsive behavior. So I just did a video on this. In an effort to not be repetitive or reinvent the wheel, I'm simply going to point you in the direction of that video by putting it right here in the cards, and you can click on it and watch it at your leisure. Number 2, you will have to forgive you fully before your partner will forgive you fully. Now, if you're doing betrayal trauma recovery with your partner, rest assured that your partner has forgiven you a little, or they probably wouldn't be sitting there with you. But as difficult as it may be to accept, it would be irresponsible for your partner to forgive you fully too quickly. And in my opinion, it would be irresponsible for your partner to forgive you before you have forgiven you. Why is that, you might wonder? Well, people who have trouble forgiving themselves often don't do a very good job of taking care of themselves. And people who don't take care of themselves very well don't have very good boundaries either. And sex addiction and sexually compulsive behavior, make no mistake, is about epic boundary failure. I truly believe that most betrayed partners know this intuitively. They forgive you enough to get them into the doors with you to work a recovery program with you, but they're waiting for you to learn to forgive yourself because it just wouldn't be smart to be with someone who hasn't. Now, when that happens, it's often difficult for partners to experience, but that's because they're experiencing something new and different from you, and they just don't know if they can trust it yet. Number 3, secrecy is not completely motivated by selfishness. That way of making sense of your behavior is the easy way to make sense of it, which is the path of least resistance, but it's really not conducive for recovery. One mantra that my partners and I live by when we're working with people is that we're going to pursue reality at all costs. And the reality is that it's more complicated than you being selfish. Yes, selfishness is part of it, and it's usually part of it through the means of self-preservation, protecting yourself, keeping it secret because you don't want crap to hit the fan and lives to be upturned and your life become a mess and have to deal with all that, and that adds more stress. Remember the first one, sex addiction, sexually compulsive behavior is often not about sex, it's about emotion management. So the last thing that you're wanting to do is to create more chaos that you have to manage. So yes, there is an element of selfishness involved in this, but most sexually compulsive people aren't acting out or keeping secrets in effort to hurt somebody. Now that ends up being the result, but that's not their motive. In fact, they are also motivated by their desire to not hurt people. In many cases, keeping secrets is just part of a narrative that they've operated under for years and years of their life, and that is what makes sense to them as the better option until they see how their secrets have hurt people. So yes, there is an element of protecting self when it comes to secrecy, but there's also an element of protecting others too. Number 4, good person status is not something you can earn. It's something you already are. This seems to be one of the more difficult concepts for addicts and sexually compulsive people to buy into from my experience. They feel like they are a bad person, and that is shame talking. But the reality is, they don't just feel like a bad person because of the pain they've caused their partner. They often feel like a bad person all the time, even before their partner found out about their secret behavior. One of the most rewarding parts of my job is getting to be a part of people's lives who are going through this process and getting to watch them realize that they've always been a good person. Watching them come to the understanding that the more they accept that reality, the less likely they are to hurt someone in very big ways. Why? Because they're just not interested in keeping secrets anymore. Honesty, transparency, integrity is the name of the game now. So if you're still watching this, you've made it to the 5th and final aha moment that I plan to reveal. And as I said earlier, it's a doozy. Before we get into it, I just want to remind you one more time to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And go ahead and hit that like button if you found the information in this video interesting. Here's the doozy that you've all been waiting for. Sex addicts have to learn to love their addict. Now, in sex addiction recovery and a lot of different forms of addiction recovery, in that community, they will often refer to that part of themselves that acts out in that addictive form as their addict. But whether it's sex addiction recovery or sexually compulsive recovery, or if you had an affair one time, whatever part of you was pushing you forward in that, you have to learn to love that part of yourself. Before you click away, hear me out. This doesn't mean that you're not supposed to accept responsibility for what you've done and the pain that you have caused through the decisions that you have made. But it's also understanding that your addict, or whatever part of you thought it was a good idea to act out in the ways that you did, they're still a part of you. And to hate any part of you, in my opinion, is to hate yourself. Plus, if you were to dive into the world of your addict, you might come to understand your addict in a very different way. But that's another video for another time. In reality, if you're involved in betrayal trauma recovery, you likely are experiencing or have experienced one of the darkest times of your life. It takes a lot of courage nonetheless, and I commend you for that. But if you're someone who's thinking about getting involved with betrayal trauma recovery, then please go check out the description of this video where I have put a link to a therapist directory where you can search for betrayal trauma therapists in your area so that you can get that process going. Don't give up, stay strong. I'll see you back here next time.